Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining Agritecture's travel-free digital conference. My name is Eric Roth, and I am an urban agriculture consultant with Agritecture. Joining me today is Dr. Daniel Beckmann of Foodshed IO, which is a company working to reinvent food distribution with the local farmer in mind. Thanks for joining us today, Daniel.
Thanks for inviting me. This is fun.
Why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about Foodshed.io and what you guys are, working to solve and what you're doing.
Well, we are a technology company that basically connects independent local farms to major retailers. There's a huge chasm between those two different groups right now, and they should be friends. It's pretty hard for a farm to look at a major grocery chain, for instance, and make it past a lot of their rules. They have rules for what they need to file with the government, different certifications, and then there's also different quality standards that we help them with. And then there's the problem of how do you even get it to their distribution center and make sure that you're not wasting your time with that. So, and then, there's just the complicated issue of trying to get buyers to buy from all these different farms in your area. So we help with that. But then the other thing that we do for the retailers is we really get involved with them too. We provide a marketing platform for them. And this summer, we're going to be testing something that basically lets their customers know how long ago the food was picked and when there's fresh food in the store. So it's a pretty complicated system. There's a lot going on here, but the goal is we're trying to make local seasonal produce, things that you would normally find at a farmer's market, available to everybody at a reasonable price, in some cases 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We feel like if we can do that, then it basically makes it affordable for everybody. It can stabilize our farms. It can redo the way that our food system is set up right now. And not to make things all about what's going on this week with this COVID virus, but local supply chains are more resilient. There's a lot more options when you're sourcing locally than when you have these really strung out supply chains. So this has been a busy week for us.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. You say it's been a busy week because we had about 50 or so applicants to do these webinars, and we had an optional question that said, how has COVID-19 affected your business? And I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that you were the only entry that had a positive response to that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
well,
so how can you explain that?
Basically, well, there's a lot of pain out there, and I don't want to minimize that. And we definitely have been dealing with that on a daily basis. I'd say the biggest issue right now is that all of a sudden, for a lot of our farms who are delivering to restaurants or schools or major institutions or corporations, that was gone immediately. And at the same time, it's been hard to get our foot in the door and get everything going with a major grocery chain. But we're working with a chain called Schnucks that's based in Missouri and covers a 5-state region. And all the demand that was going to restaurants and places that people would work at or go to school at, it's now all at grocery stores. And there's record sales going on at those places right now. And they're doing a pretty good job of trying to keep things in order. But when you go to a grocery later in the day or after a truck has been there and, people have picked through for a while, you've probably noticed in some areas that there's been some empty shelves. And so that's where we come in. I mean, as much as we've been able to do this, and there's been some really panicky situations where people have things that aren't even produce related, like eggs, that just completely lost their order, where we've been really trying to get them a home for that, not just this week, but into the future. And what I'm hoping with this crisis happens is that it proves that local food is a good idea. Different areas are going to get hit with this in different ways. And I'm talking to you from California right now. 40 million people just got an order that they have to stay home. And so much food is grown here. So that is an essential thing. And those people will be able to go to pick things and deliver things. That's always going to be allowed because that's necessary. But it's disruptive. And so there's all sorts of issues that come into play here, whether it's people's immigration status or whether it's if they need childcare at home. So to have a spread out system of distributing food actually is resilient, not during a time like this, because not only during a time like this, because this hopefully won't be coming up a lot more, but we really thought that this would be helpful for climate change. When there's a romaine recall from one area of the country, and this from your work, there's a lot of farms now all over the country that can fill that need. And so we don't really miss a step. And that's where we thought that this would come into play. But right now, this week, it's stores are really need as much volume as they can. And if this continues for a couple of weeks, we're going to see some parts of the supply chain probably disappearing temporarily. So that's an issue. And that's why I don't want to make light of it. I think it is positive for us. I think our sales have increased this week. But it's not the way that we planned for it. And it's not something that, we don't think this is here to stay, in the sense that we're always going to be having everybody go to grocery stores to get all their food. But for now, it's helpful for us.
Well, that's great. I think it's, in these times that, it's become very difficult for people to find what they need at stores. These technology platforms become that much more important, and moving forward, I think this is, a sort of dress rehearsal for the next big one, the next issue. And the more we can focus on people, getting food from nearby and propping up their local food economy, the better it's going to be for everybody in the long run. So to take it a little lighter, what inspired you to, work with Foodshed.io? It's a very innovative concept. So what inspired you to get into the field? Maybe what are some of the challenges that you saw?
Those are good questions. I always start by answering this question with bringing up my co-founders, because Tom and Claire, who actually started this, they had an urban farm project called Feedback Farms in Brooklyn that was really successful and grew a lot of food there in an urban setting. And they had a hard time just getting it to all the places that they need to. And I would say that that's still an issue in the New York area. When I came on, what was interesting to me about it was I thought that if we could work with a big institution and start there, then we could stabilize these farms for the season, give them the orders in advance if it's possible, and then work our way back to smaller places like restaurants and, I guess, individual customers. So I took it in that direction. And the other reason that I wanted to was that I'm from the Midwest, and I've spent a lot of time in my adult life in New York and California, and they do have better produce in those places, especially California. But my relationship to produce growing up was like Fun Fruits. I remember those things, or fruit roll-ups. Yeah. And I was surprised that like people in California take a persimmon or whatever that is, because I didn't even know what one was, and they think that's candy here. And in places like the Midwest and a lot of places throughout the country, and even in places in California in some spots, there isn't good access to this kind of thing. And so the reason I'm in it is because it looked really cool, and I thought that I could bring something interesting to this. But I've noticed that, it isn't that people don't like good food in these places, it's that they just don't have it. And when we bring it to them, it's really exciting. And then the other thing is, I have a news and politics background, which are two of the most hated industries in the country right now. And this is a different kind of industry. I see people here who help out. It's an essential industry, and you have to get it absolutely right. Because, it's either spoiled or it's good enough to eat. And in a lot of cases, hopefully it's better than that. And so I really liked being a part of something like that, where it really, it's a fact or a law of nature about whether or not something gets delivered and whether or not something works. Um, and then helping these farmers in these communities, if we're able to do that, it solves a lot of problems. In doing political work or even being a journalist, you can't really have as much of an impact in actually helping people from all walks of life. And, this isn't partisan, which I like. I don't think it needs to be. And just being able to bring millions of dollars to the 5 states that we're going to be doing this year, to help those farms and to help those communities, and see how that's working really quickly. It's there's no better way for me to spend my time. So that's kind of my story. But I don't have a food and agricultural background, and I think that's been helpful too, because I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and some of those things turned out to be good ideas.
That's interesting. So you guys are such a high tech sort of idea. Are there any other companies or solutions, whether it's specifically in agriculture or in sustainability, that you're really excited about right now? Any partnerships or other companies that excite you?
There's a lot of people doing a lot of really interesting things. And we were in an incubator called Yield Lab, which is based in St. Louis, and they have a wide variety of things that I didn't even really understand or know about, in terms of companies that are trying to prolong the shelf life of things. That's helpful for us. The more that we can reduce the pitch rate for produce overall, that helps with food waste, but it also will help farmers to get paid more, because we all pay for what's thrown out from the shelves in groceries. And so if we can work on that, then that's really helpful. Especially if it's this produce that's allowed to be ripe when it's picked, because often that means that it has less of a shelf life if it's not picked when it's green or whatever it is, depending upon whatever it is. So companies like that have packaging, that can keep things longer. Those are the kinds of things that I think I personally get a lot more excited about. I do think that traceability is not, a lot of people talk to us about that, and it's definitely on our website, and it's part of what we're going to be doing. But I almost feel like that's something that should come a lot later. We do have traceability in our food system on some level right now, but with local farms like this, if we establish a relationship between buyers and sellers and the community, so that they know that this is something that's going to be out there, then you can do all sorts of traceability measures and all sorts of regenerative practices, because these farms need business. And so going in there and saying you have to do all this stuff, and then they don't have money to do it, or a buyer, or they're unfunded, or they're unproven markets, it just doesn't work. And so that's something that that we focus a lot on, even though we do have a traceability component for sure in what we're doing.
I'm fascinated with your guys' platform, and I just wanted to ask you one other question. As of right now, the people that are using this platform are buyers for restaurants, grocery stores, and like institutional buyers.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might have mentioned this a little bit before as something you envision in the future, but can you see that this platform someday becoming something that the average consumer or a CEA community could take part in and get the benefits?
Well, there are friends that we have in this business. One place is called Good Eggs, and I think they do a good job. Retailing is hard, and you're dealing with all the different customer demands. Doing a B2C, a retailing company online, I think is really difficult. Not to bring us back to COVID-19, but where's Amazon? You go there right now, and like, you can't get anything delivered.
Mhm.
Instacart is having problems. I mean, I'm just going to point them out because maybe people are busy right now and don't notice, but what's really working is if you go to Walmart, you can actually know when the truck is coming there and you can show up at the store. Now, this is an unusual circumstance, but Good Eggs, I think, has been holding up pretty well in the Bay Area. As a startup, I'm really proud and impressed with what they've been able to do during this time. Um, but I don't take it lightly that retailing is hard. And where we show up, our brand, we're powering Schnucks' local program, and our brand will be seen there, and it's going to be seen in their digital app. So the consumer will be able to see us, and hopefully will be a trusted brand in terms of these are farms that have been through a process, and these are people that actually know how to find things. We do stories on the farmers. Pretty much everyone that we work with in some way, we try to do that for them. So we are trying to bring the farmers from out, so that there's a face with the food. But to get to a level where consumers would interact with us, I won't completely close that door, but I don't think that's anything I want to do, or I think would make sense for us to do anytime soon. There's a lot of work here. If we just focused on the grocery segment, and there are other places that we are focusing on, there's a lot of work for us to do there. And, I also like the idea that there's a reason to go to a store. I know that we're all having social distancing right now, and I hope that doesn't become the new trend, but when we all come out of our caves, eventually it's nice to be able to have samples. It's nice to be able to see other people. And so personally speaking, I really am rooting for your just normal mainstream grocer. I'm rooting for places like Kroger and Publix and Wegmans, and these are places we're not even working with yet, but I want them to survive and evolve. There's some ideas out there in grocery about making these places more community based, and there's some examples where this has been the case. There's a place called Good Earth, I think is what, Whole Earth. It's up in Marin County. In many ways, I hope they don't get upset, but we really been watching them in their model. Most of their produce comes from a local place, and you actually see people there meeting all the time in a grocery store. And I like seeing senior citizens out in public and having something to do. And I could see that happening with a lot of the major chains as well. So that's a long answer to your question. But I also feel like, we can work with food hubs. We can work with other places like that. When we get our technology built out, I think it's going to make sense to have partners that are doing this. And I don't want anybody to think that we're replacing them in any way. I think that we're working with places. A lot of the food hubs are doing incredible work, and they may not have technology to make it more efficient. If they do, or whatever the case is there, we can still buy from them. So what's really great about this market right now is that it's growing. And that means that all of us hopefully can work together as it's an expanding situation. It's not contracting. So far it's been good for us. I guess the only thing I worry about is I do think that we're onto something here, and there's a lot of people that are really uncreative out there, and we're going to have competition eventually. But we obviously want to be the ones to do this. When we decided to start doing this in the way that we started doing it, people didn't think that this was going to work and that this was a good idea. So we took all of that risk, and it hasn't been easy. And so but we'll see what happens. It's pretty hard to get to the point that we're at. So we feel like we're going to get a chance to be the ones to lead on it.
What excites you about 2020? Is there any, new exciting developments happening?
There's a lot that excites us. I mean, obviously this week is a little bit uncertain. I hope that all the farms make it. We're not in every region, and I don't know who's going to be watching this, and I'm more than willing to work through some ideas with people if they want to write us. We have some other people here. We can try to figure out some things that we can do, but we're really just getting started, and we have a contract with a reasonable grocery chain that's in 5 states in the Midwest. And if people are in those areas and their farms, or they have some produce or food that's local that they need to sell, they should definitely call us. Beyond that region, we're not there yet. And so I have a concern about that. I hope that these farms are going to get relief as well as small businesses, so that this is something that didn't isn't their fault. And if they're all of a sudden don't have orders because there's no restaurants open, that's not their fault. And so there's that kind of thing that I'm concerned about. But in terms of opportunities, there's going to be a lot of opportunities from this year. And I think that we're interested in working with people to come up with creative ideas, but I think people will come up with their own. There's already, I'm sure, people that are doing what we're doing directly to people this week without any red tape and without anything to make sure that people are being fed. That might seem like a depression era kind of thing, and hopefully this is short and somehow we get back to normal again. But that's innovation in some ways too, and we're going to get a lot of innovation from this year that will certainly be memorable. In terms of us, we may end up getting to some places a lot faster than we wanted to. Like we might get more items in the store than we ever thought we were going to this year, so that's good. And I hope that we still get our marketing efforts out there. At this point, when people just want it and we're trying to get it on the shelf, I'm not sure how interested people are going to be in the short term about how fresh it was, but I still think we're going to be able to do that. So, that was the thing that I was most excited about this year, that I still think is going to be showing its face in the summer, because I think by the summer, things will kind of stabilize. That's what everybody hopes. If that's the case, in the 5-state area that we're working with, you will get an alert if you have the Schnucks app that says there's fresh cantaloupe in your store. Come and get it while it's there. That's really profound. It may sound stupid or simple, but that's not going on right now, and that's something that we're really excited about this year.
That's great. Well, Dr. Beckmann, I really appreciate you taking the time. If you just want to share, any call to action for our listeners, your website, social media accounts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, if anybody's really interested, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions. Right now, we're kind of focused on what we're doing, so there aren't things for consumers to buy from us. If you're a farmer and you need help, give us a call. I don't know what we can do, but we definitely care.
Yeah.
And feel free to reach out. My email is dan@foodshed.io. And I'm working all the time, and with isolation here in California, pretty soon that's all I'm going to be doing. So feel free to call me. I'll be around.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Take care.